Rabbi Shavais quoted Rabbi Kiva Eiger in Tshuvas, Tinyana Siman Nun Hey, that somebody who had kavanah to be mekadesh b'kesef, b'tabas, as one does, and that didn't work out, then we're not choshesh for the kiddushin, even though there was also chuppah. Mm-hmm. But somebody who had kavanah to be mekadesh b'chuppah, then and only then do you have this other opinion. The opinion of Rabbi Chananel, Rashi, and the Aruch HaShulchan and the Levush that are choshesh for it. But if you didn't have kavanah to be mekadesh b'chuppah, then of course it's not going to work. Okay. Furthermore, says Rabbi Kiva Eiger, it would only work if you said Hariyat Mekudeshes li b'chuppah zu. Okay. Now, then Rabbi Asher Weiss quotes from Moshe Brandsdorfer saying as follows. Umasha kosav the ad kanle kosav agon Rabbi Kiva Eiger dim kivin lekadosh b'tabas eina koina b'chuppah ela b'chosan shehischaret v'lo kiddush b'kesef. Rabbi Moshe Brandsdorfer understood the Rabbi Kiva Eiger to be talking about somebody who wanted to be mekadesh b'kesef, changed his mind, and wasn't mekadesh b'kesef. But somebody that wanted to be mekadesh, and if he were to know that for some reason this kiddush kesef is not working, and your only option you're going to be left with is to utilize the chuppah, given that the whole purpose they're standing there, she's in this white dress and he's in a kittel and I don't know what. Well, what do they want? Of course they want. They want to be mekudeshes. Ideally, they want to do it the normal way. But if for some reason that one's not working, then surely it is in their das, says Rav Moshe Brandsdorfer, and he's understanding this and he's reading it also into the Tshuvas Rabbi Kiva Eiger, that the only time we say chuppah does not work is if somebody is mischaret and he has charota and he wasn't mekadesh b'kesef. But in this case, where he writes, says Rav Moshe Brandsdorfer, roitze lekadsha, vadai de roitze lekadsha gam b'chuppah b'chol derech. Therefore, of course, you have to take into account what his das was. And if all you have left is chuppah because the police came and broke up the party, then the chassan and kala, surely, if you were to ask them, they would say, okay, so we'll go with chuppah. We're not Talmidei Chachamim, we don't know.
Could you theoretically go further and then in a certain scenario say yichud would be the next level?
Well, the question is what chuppah is. The question is what yichud, that's a whole, we're going to see whatever chuppah is. And he mentioned it before. Chuppah does not mean 4 poles. I mean, that was what Rabbi Shavai said. V'oid kosav. Furthermore, Rav Moshe Brandsdorfer wrote, we have to take into account that very possibly that given the police came and were mevatel what was going on over there, cancelled the whole thing, then mistoma hiskaven lekadsha b'chuppah. Then probably his kavana was to say the kiddushin is with the chuppah. Ubefrat, and he adds, Shahaminag, the minig is, Sha'omrim lechasan, you say to the chasan, Sheyiskaven lekadsha b'chol hadrochim, gam b'chuppah. Rav Moshe Brandsdorfer says there is a minig, that you speak to the chasan and you say, have kavana to be kaina in any possible way, kinyan hamoyil, it's called, any kinyan that might work, including chuppah. Rav Moshe Brandsdorfer sees this, when we do mechiras chametz, the minhag is, the masorah is, that we use up to 7 different kinyonim. Right? Because you want to cover all the bases. When you are doing a commercial transaction, al pi halacha, with a Gentile, there are lots of different opinions as to which kinyon works. And therefore we do multiple kinyonim. Oidisa, and chalipin, and chotzer, and others. I've gone blank. Yeah? You do a bunch of different kinyonim. And you say to the Gentile, and this is part of the process, is that you say, look, we have our legal halachic system, and there are differences of opinion whether to this method of transfer of ownership works or whether that method works. And therefore, I want each of them to have the option of being valid in their own right. And if A doesn't work for some reason, then B as a standalone works. And so will C, and so will D. Yeah? So I'm using this as an example, as an analogy. And this is what Rav Moshe Brandsdorfer is saying. And he says there's a minhag. And this is really interesting, because Rav Osher is going to push back shortly and say, I've never heard of this minhag. Really, really interesting. So Rav Moshe Brandsdorfer says there is a minhag in Yerushalayim that what you say to the chassan under the chuppah in Yerushalayim apparently is, you say to him, look, there is Kiddush Kesef. there's various different things, and have kavana, chosan and kala, that whichever one works will work, and if two will work, two will work. If only one will work, it might be this one, might not be that one. Have in mind, she's kavan lekadsha b'chol hadrochim v'gam b'chuppah. On that, okay, says Rabbi Shabbai back to Ramesha Brandsdorf. I'm really sorry, I did not understand. The svara of Rabbi Kiva Eiger, brura upshuta, is simple. Kol hamakadosh isha tachas chuppasa. Anybody who stands under a chuppah with a woman, their das is to be mekavan, their das is to be mekadsha only b'tabas. Ve'ein hakidushin ela alidei kavona brura umafureshes. Kiddushin only works if you have a very clear focus and you know what it is that you're doing. V'loy mahani bazeh, anan sahadi. You can't start applying the logic of anan sahadi. Do you remember that? Anan sahadi. It's as if there's an umdana. We testify that if the fellow, you cannot impute motive, to use the technical English term. You can't impute motive. That's imputing motive, anan sahadi. We testify that there is a general understanding that this would be in the mind of somebody. That's not good enough. You can't start making an anan sahadi. Because you can't say that if he would know, if the chosan and kala are very possibly just simple people. The girl's 13 for crying out loud. What's she going to know about the halachas of, and this, who knows, I don't know how old he was, it makes no difference whether he's an Amoritz or not. He just does as he's told. What does a chosan and kala do under the chuppah? You stand there and you do as you're told. And you have kavanah and you focus and you trust the rabbi says this is what you do, this is what your kavanah should be, and you follow. It doesn't mean you've done what we're doing, learning it in depth, learning Hilchos Kiddushin. So to start imputing motive and to say, if the chosan would have known that the police are coming and the whole thing is going to be, you don't plan that the police will bust into your chuppah and cancel the whole thing. You don't have that in mind. And therefore you can't start creating if he would have known, I'm sure he would have wanted chuppah to be a kinyan. We don't know. Sorry, it doesn't work. He didn't have kavanah to be for chuppah, and therefore it doesn't work. Umasha Ratzalema Delay Mary Gun Rabbi Kiva Eiger Ella B'Masha Toli B'Date B'Chozabai. Ramesha Brandsdorfer said Rabbi Kiva Eiger is talking about a case where a person had kavanah to do kesef and he changed his mind. V'Chozar boy says Rabbi Shabbai Toma Ani. I don't understand. Halay Gun Rabbi Kiva Eiger Loi Mayre B'Chazor B'Klal. Rabbi Kiva Eiger does not mention anywhere a word of somebody changing their mind. The case of Rabbi Kiva Eiger is a kiddushin where you did a kiddushin with a ring, but you messed up. You did what's called matana al manos lahachzir. You gave it as a gift on the understanding of giving it back, which is a technical problem. It's not good enough. So he didn't change his mind. He messed up. He did a bad kiddushin kesef. It was an invalid. Why don't we also therefore start thinking over there, well, maybe he knows that a woman is not going to be mekudeshes with a tabas that isn't hers, and therefore maybe he had in mind to be kavanah for chuppah. Doesn't work that way. You see clearly from Rabbi Kiva Eiger, el korchach, b'chol inyan v'oifan amrinon, we always say that if you did not have specific kavanah for this, we cannot start assuming and imputing motive that this is what he meant. And therefore the same thing over here. And then he brings the Tosfos in Ksubas. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. And then he just says an interesting thing. Umashe kosav noihagin. Ramesha Brandsdorfer quotes a minig. The minig is to say to the chosan lehiskaven lekadsha b'chol derech af b'chuppah minig ze lo yodati v'lo shomati v'lo roisi b'shum makom. Says Rabbi Shavais, I've never heard of this before. Ume'olam lo chazinon l'rabunan kashishui. We never saw our zikanim, those from whom we received our Messiah, that they should say to the chosan that he should be Mekadesh's wife with the chuppah. Soif dava, says Rabbi Shavai, sorry, soif dava, there's nothing to talk about over here, no need for a get. Of course, he does recommend that we convene a beis din, and we go ve'edus, and we speak to the chosan and kala, and try and do whatever we can, because eishes ish, Sophic eishes ish is very, very chomor, but he's very comfortable to say there is definitely no kiddushin over here, and no need for a get. There is a response to this. Which actually I'm not. It's much longer than I thought. It's a much longer one, and then Rabasha responds again. He says he says he does not agree with the analysis of Rabbi Kiva Eiger. I think we're going to leave it here because I'm scared I'm going to get bogged down. If I start going into it, it'll take 2 or 3 sessions, and I don't really want to do that. But what we have shown is as follows. Back to our Shulchan Aruch, and we'll now make a little bit more progress. What we have shown is that chuppah is not a kinyan, right? We've spoken about that's what the Shulchan Aruch says. V'yesh omrim shehu sofik. There is a second opinion that it is a sofik. That is the Rabbeinu Hananel. That is possibly the Rashi. We saw the Shara Melech. And the Aruch HaShulchan and the Levush Halachah Ma'aser, they are of the opinion to require a get misofik, possibly. Okay, let's move on. Let's try and finish the Siman today.
Do you still have the copies of? You offered Daniel copies last time.
Okay, guys, are you?
Yeah, that's one.
Okay, Chevra.
Evan has it.
Please. I kind of assume that you bring the text to the.
Sorry.
Okie dokie. There's another sticker on here. It seems that one of the answers, one of the responses, the rebuttals in this other tshuva here, is that it seems that Rav Moshe Brandsdorfer was the son of Rav Meir Brandsdorfer, one of the Gedolei HaPoskim in Yerushalayim, and he says there's a minhag, then there's a minhag. That's the response. Rav Asher Weiss hasn't heard of it, Beseder, but that does not invalidate the Masorah and the tradition of Rav Meir Brandsdorfer, who was a veteran Dayan and Posek. Let me see if I can find that piece.
But here, outside of Eretz Israel, you never heard of that?
I have not. There are some chumras that some people do there. For example, we'll talk about it when we get to Siman Nun Hey. There are some people who pay a rental for the mokim of the chuppah, so it's considered knisa l'reshus. Well, we do chuppah, of course we do chuppah, but and because you need chuppah. But chuppah is usually more associated with nisuin than erusin. If you remember, we saw this as a machlekes in the Pischei Tshuva. Okay. Right, Chevra. Let us continue. Siman Chavav Sif Gimel. Yeah, and please, it should be selbstverständlich that we have the text that we are learning. Yeah, please. Okay, weiter. Sif Gimel. Mishan is kanshon nechsheves keishes ish l'chayev habo oleho utzricho get lahatiro l'shuk. Paskins the Shulchan Aruch, and this is based on the Torah, the Rambam. And it's the Be'er HaGolah says uposhatu that once you have done Kiddushin, the woman is considered an Eishes Ish, which then becomes an Issa Da'iraisa of Eishes Ish for anybody who is intimate with her after that point, even before you've done Nisuin. Kiddushin alone, the first part, is enough to she is an Eishes Ish, even though she's not yet even a mutter to her husband until they've done Nisuin, right? But from that point onwards, what would be if, for whatever reason, a woman stands under the chuppah, and there's Eidim, and he gives her a ring, Hariyat Mekudeshesli, and no, then you don't need to get. Dead men don't give gittin, to quote,
but
to paraphrase.
She would be an almana.
Although
if it didn't work, then she wouldn't be.
That's true.
Right.
That's true. But he walks away or she walks away at that stage. A get is required. A get is required. Nothing to talk about. Okay, and there isn't even really any comment from the. There's no comment on the poskim here. This is selbstverständlich. Okay. Now, Siv Dalad. Let's move on. Ha'isha miskadeshes b'shleisha derachim. There are 3 ways to create Kiddushin. Bekesef, oy bishtar, oy bebia min ha-Torah. The mission at the beginning of Kiddushin. Kesef, or shtar, or bia. Now that is min ha-Torah. Avol chachomim osru lekadish bebia mishum pritzus. So gesund. The chachomim forbade doing Kiddushin with bia mishum pritzus. It's not appropriate.
It was a word, yeah.
It's not sugapast. It's not appropriate. It's pritzus. It's a breach of the norms of decency. Yeah, it's pritzus. And this is based on This is based on a Gemara, where the Gemara says in Kiddushin that Rav mangid amanda mekadesh bebiyah, says the Gemara. Rav would order lashes, midrabanon, makas mardus. He would order the shliach based to hit makas mardus, somebody who was mekadesh bebiyah, even though in HaTorah it's valid, but Chachamim come along and say, don't do it. Obviously, if you did it, it would be valid, and we'll talk about that, but it's considered pritzus, and therefore we don't do it. So Chachamim osru lekadesh bebiyah, mishum pritzus. Ve'im ovar v'kiddush bebiyah. If somebody nonetheless transgressed and went ahead and was mekadesh bebiyah, makinos makas mardus. Ve'hi mekudeshes. He gets lashes. Notice it says he gets the lashes. We'll talk about that in a minute. Makinosoi makas mardus ve'hi mekudeshes. But she is mekudesh. Va'afilu kinsha. Now here's a second thing. Va'afilu kinsha b'kesef oy b'shtar. Even if he was mekadesh b'kesef oy b'shtar. Im loy shidech tchila, if he did not first shidech, if there wasn't shiduchin first, meaning that they sat and they met and they agreed and they discussed. In other words, you just go up to a woman, or shekiddush b'shuk, or if you just did it b'shuk in the marketplace. In other words, you just go up to a woman, and there are two Eidim there, you just walk up to her without any prior discussion, any prior arrangement known as shiduchim, and you're just there in the marketplace, you're out in the public.
Just with one date.
With one, well, a date, I don't know if a date is Shava Pruta, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. That was a joke. I'm not sure that's what you meant. Datel, yeah. With a €2, you go up to a woman in front of two Eidim, and you say to her, Hariyat Mekudeshes Li, with this, Kadas Moshe Yisrael, and she says, okay, yes, and she agrees, or if it's a ring, she takes out her finger, whatever. That is, it may work, but it's wrong. Even a Kiddush B'kesef or B'shtar, Im Lo Shidduch Tchila, or Shekiddush B'shuk, Makin Oisei Makas Mardus, V'hi Mekudeshes. Again, there are petch, as we say in Yiddish.
But she's still Mekudeshes.
She is Mekudeshes, it works. But there was Eidim. There was Kiddushin, there was Eidim. She agreed. He said, Hariyat Mekudeshes Li, there were Eidim. The technical steps of Kiddushin have been followed, although it is utterly incorrect, not the right thing to do.
Also not so smart because you don't know her.
But smart is not my problem. It's not the halacha's problem. But halacha makes contingencies for lots of people who are not smart. Trust me. It's not an advice bureau. It's what is the halacha if this happens? Hagol says the Ramah. Says the Ramah. This is the Torah in the name of the Rosh, that makas are reserved only for somebody who's Mekadesh Bebiyah, not somebody who just walks up to a woman b'shuk in the marketplace and is Mekadesh without prior arrangement. In other words, there's a machlokes mechaber Ramah. When Rav was mangid amanda Mekadesh Bebiyah, how far was this extended? It's machlokes. According to the Shulchan Aruch, you get makas drabonon if you do kiddushay kesef without shiduchim, or you do it b'shuk. According to the Ramah, although it's wrong, the Ramah will agree you shouldn't do it, but corporal punishment, makas mardus, is reserved only for kiddush b'biyah. Yes?
But, I mean, just the Eidim have to be also kosher in the shuk.
Oh, obviously. Yeah. Otherwise, there's nothing to talk about, obviously. We're talking about where the Eidim. Yeah. V'loi ra'isi, finishes off the Ramah, v'loi ra'isi miyomai shehiku mishakiddush b'loi shiduchim. Says the Ramah, I have never... It's interesting. He offers his opinion, well, he quotes the Torah and the Rosh, and then he adds, really interesting, and I have never witnessed anybody being hit for being Mekadesh b'loi shiduchim. Okay, interesting to see. Okay, that's the Mechaber. Let's have a look here at the Beis Shmuel. Let's see the Beis Shmuel. Zok the Beis Shmuel on Sif Dalad. It's Sif Cotton Dalad Min HaTorah. We say there's three ways to make Kiddushin Min HaTorah, right? Says the Beis Shmuel. Kosav Rambam. Reish Halacha Aleph Kesef hu midivrei Seifrim. The Rambam says that Kesef is only midivrei Seifrim. This is whenever a yeshiva bacha learns Maseches Kiddushin, you say lots of nice shtiklech Torah on this. But just for us to be aware, the Rambam says that Kesef is midivrei Seifrim. It sounds like it's midrabanan. The Mishnah says Kesef, but Kosav Magid Ubekesef Mishnah, Midoraisa he. Of course, the Rambam agrees that if you do Kiddushin Kesef, it's Midoraisa. Ela kol davar she'eino mefurish b'Torah nikra divrei sofrim, because it's not explicit in the Torah as a method, although it has the weight and the authority of Midoraisa, we learn it out, etc. But it's called divrei sofrim. But don't mistake the Rambam as saying that Kiddushin Kesef are not valid min haTorah. Of course, they are valid min haTorah, but because it's not mefurish b'Torah, nikra divrei sofrim. Avol dinoi kedin Torah. Ein Siman Mem Beis, Ein Rambam. Fine, that's that. Next point over here, Tur b'Shem Horosh. That is on the Ramah. That you don't get Makas Mardas for being Mekadosh B'Shuk. Kach Posek Horosh. Pegnam Gulin V'Abeis Yosef Hevi Dvorov. U'B'Siman Zeh Ishtamte Le'Lechin Kosov Deina Muchrach the Horosh Svira Le'Kein. And it could be it's not definite that the Rosh definitely holds that. Okay, there are some Pischei Tshuvas here, which I'm going to try and summarize. I actually meant to highlight the lines that I wanted to do with you, but let's see if I can do this quickly. Here's a problem. Let me just highlight a problem for you. Problem is as follows: the Torah says something is mutter. Chazal come along and say, don't do it. Right? So the Sefer HaMakna asks the question that we pasken, or one of the questions is, we pasken that Bia creates Erusin and not Nisuin. Right? So why did Chazal find the need, again, we discussed, well, we haven't really said it, Bia, Ha'ishonik is Bekesef Bishtar Ubebia, right? Bia creates what? Erusin or Nisuin? It creates Erusin. So why did Chazal feel the need to say they didn't want somebody to be Mekadesh with Bia? Anyway, Bia only creates Erusin. So she's also to him anyway because she hasn't gone into the chuppah. Why did Chazal even need to do that? That's the Hamakna's question. So the Hamakna answers, the Pischei Teshuvah brings this, one answer, I'll give you one of the answers. He says, when do we say that Bia only creates Erusin and not Nisuin? That's when you, that's Bia stam. But where you are Machnisa lebeisai and you're Mekadsha bebia, then you have chuppah, and that's called chuppah and kiddushin together. Okay? And therefore the only problem is only pritzos, because really that would create Nisuin, because it's because you are bringing her into your house. That is, really, it's actually Nisuin as well. On that, Chazal came along and said, no, don't do it, even though theoretically it would create both Erusin and Nisuin, because it's incorporating Chuppah, Yichud, Hachnosa, L'Rishus, but don't do it Mishum Pritzos. Okay. One or two more small points over here. We said he gets the Makas, not her, even though she also did an Issa. Pischei Teshuvah says, he brings that in the name of the Yeshua Yaakov. What would be if for some reason the Kiddushin didn't work? For some reason, you said, let's say the Adam turned out to be no good or something. So a guy tried to be Mekadosh B'Shuk, but there was a technical reason that the Kiddushin was no good. Do you still get Malchus? Or do you only get Malchus when it works? What do you think? So
I think you get
Go on.
Malchus anyway.
Okay.
Because because it states then that he gets Malchus, but she's also
Mekudeshes.
So, because it states that, I think,
Yeah.
means that it's two separate things. First, he gets Malchus for this action that...
Interesting.
So,
I might have thought that. Lemaisa, the Tashbat says not like that.
oh, wow.
The Pischei Teshuvah over here brings the Tashbats. I'm not going to do it with you inside because it's long and I want to keep moving. But the Pischei Teshuvah says, when do we say that you get Makas? That's only Ahanu Ma'asov, V'hava Kiddushin or Sofa Kiddushin. Only if you end up with a situation where it is Kiddushin or Sofa Kiddushin. But if for some reason the Kiddushin are not Chal, then there are no Makas, although of course he is Ro'oi Ligoir Boy. He should get, he deserves a jolly good shouting at. So it's not good. Okay? One last point over here. And here's an interesting shaila. I don't know. Chuppah at night. You ever been to a Kiddushin at night?
Yeah.
Yeah? So, You're not sure? So you should know in America and in other places it's quite common. They do, especially in the winter or whatever.
All at once.
Yeah. Kiddushin, do it at night. So what's the halach about doing Kiddushin at night? So there are some poskim who say it's Suffolk Kiddushin. Why? Because the Erzarua paskins that a get that is given at night is possible. And therefore there is an important Gzeira Shava, Hekesh, that you should know about. It's called V'yotza V'hoisa. The Pasuk says, V'yotza mi beisoi v'hoisa l'shacher. Makish Havaya liyitzia. If you're learning Kiddushin, you'll come across this. We compare Havaya liyitzia. For there are a number of halachic ideas for which we compare and we connect exiting the relationship from entering. Havaya liyitzia. And therefore, so the Erzarua paskins that giving a get at night is possible. Therefore, by Kiddushin, maybe it should be a problem with Kiddushin. And therefore, the Mari Mintz and the Mizrahi, the two Chosheva Poskim, say it's a Sofik Kiddushin. We're not sure whether we would use the Yotzav Hoysa for that. And therefore, in their mind, it would only be a Sofik Kiddushin.
But there's so many differences in general between get and...
Correct. So the question is, what do we do? Do we extend it to this as well? So they say they seem to be Mesupuk. They're not sure. And therefore, they say it would be a Sofik. Others say it's Mekudeshes Lechatchila. Why? It's absolutely fine. Why? Because even a get you could give at night. I'm actually at the moment involved in a situation where somebody, a man has kind of disappeared, and we are looking for him for the purposes of getting him to give a get to his wife. And I won't say which city because it's going on YouTube, but I've been in touch with the Av Beis Din and the Dayanim of this other city where we think he is, and we have authorized, upon discussion, have authorized a procedure called Kisvu Utnu, which is only used in very, very rare circumstances of giving a get. Giving a get is a procedure that involves you've got to come to Beis Din, the man and the woman, or at least the shluchim, and it's a whole lengthy process of crossing bittul meidos. It's a long get. Doesn't happen in 5 minutes. And generally speaking, we don't give gittin at night. We don't. And we always have the husband or the shliach there. Kisvu utnu is an unusual procedure, which means if we get hold of the guy, we will, with 2 witnesses, we'll get him to give authorization on the spot, and then he can run away again, and we can go ahead and do it. It's called Kisvu Utnu. And in this circumstance, this is the reason I'm mentioning it, the Beis Din of this city, we discussed it, that if we do manage to get hold of him, and it happens to be at night, and we can schlep him to Beis Din, we'll do it also. So, but that's a bit, that is a bit unusual. But why is this relevant here? Because what it shows is that actually, if you gave a get at night, it would be kosher. It is possible to give it at night, even though lechatchila we don't. But under certain circumstances, when there's a b'diavad, shas, igun, utchak, we would give it even at night. And if we do give it, it is valid. So therefore, to say that it should be, we should compare this to Kiddushin and say that it's not going to be valid to do it at night, that's not going to work, because a get is kosher balayla. Look, even though lechatchila we don't do it, but to extend it to Kiddushin, that we would not do. And even those, it says the Pischei Tshuva, even those who forbid doing a Kiddushin at night, that would only be Kiddushin shtar, because you can compare Kiddushin done with a shtar to the shtar of get. But Kiddushin kesef is different anyway, so there will be absolutely no problem. And with that, we basically finished this Siman. Okay, we've finished Siman Chavav. Let's start at least Siman Chav Zayin. Okay, let's start. Siman Chav Zayin. Bekesef Keitzad. And there's a lot of work to be done on this Siman, but let's move on. Bekesef Keitzad. How does it work with Kesef? With Kesef. First of all, the title of the Siman Chav Zayin is Keitzad Loshen HaKiddushin. What is the formula, the language that should be used? V'sheyoy marhu v'yiteinhu uboy yud seifim. He needs to say it and he needs to give it. He needs to be the one that is active, that is in the speech and in the action of giving. And we have 10 seifim. Let's start. Aleph. Bekesef Keitzad. How does Kesef work? Noisen lo bifnei shnayim pruta oishava pruta. He gives her in front of 2 witnesses a pruta, a minimum amount of money, oishava pruta, or an item which is worth a pruta. V'omer lo, and he says to her, Hariat mekudeshes li bozeh. You are mekudesh to me with this. Hago, says the Ramah, v'yesh omrim, sheyesh loymar lo kedas Moshe v'Yisrael. The Ramah quotes the Kol Boy who says that you should say, some say you should say kedas Moshe v'Yisrael. V'chein noyagin lechatchila. And that is the minig lechatchila. V'chein noyagin lekadesh b'tabas. And although it is, you can be mekadesh a woman with a piece of herring, theoretically, if it's worth a pruta, as long as it's worth a pruta, yes. But the minig is to use a ring. V'yesh lahem ta'am b'tikunei hazayar. Says the Ramah, and there's a reason for this minig based on the tikunei zayar. A little bit unusual, you don't see it all too often in the Ramah, quoting not only the zayar but the tikunei zayar. Okay. V'hu adin. Back to the Shulchan Aruch. V'hu adin, says the Shulchan Aruch, the same halacha would be im amalo hariat mu'ureses li, oy hariat li leisha. Even if you used a different formula, right? If you said, now notice, let's look at the language. I want to draw your attention. Sorry? Yes. Yeah. But that's not what I was going to say. Okay. What I was going to say was, I want to draw your attention to the formulation. V'hu hadin im omar lo. If you said this, contrast this with, go back 2 lines where he says, v'omer lo. What's the difference? V'omer lo hariat mekudeshes li. And here he says, v'hu hadin im omar lo.
He could.
Yes.
So it's not what he should do, but
correct. Exactly. Absolutely. The first one is lechatchila. This is what you should do. Your omala. But hu adin, if you did, it's in the past tense. It's b'diavad, ex post facto. V'hu adinim omala hariat mereses li, or you said hariat li leisha. V'chein b'chol loshoin shemashma usai loshoin kiddushin, and any other language which is an expression of kiddushin. Kiddushin vadai ba'oisoi makom, where it is definitely accepted as an expression of kiddushin in that locale. Ubilvad shehi tovin shehu loshen kiddushin. As long as she understands this to be a loshen of kiddushin, then that is also going to be valid. It's still not lechatchila, but it will be valid. Ve'im hoya medaber imot chilal iske kiddushin v'nosan lo afilu b'shtika have a kiddushin. This is a beautiful piece of Gemara, and this is something that isn't not always appreciated. What would be? Yeah. If they were, here's the phrase you need to memorize. It's called asukin ba'oisoi inyan. They were asukin. That's what the Gemara says. They were asukin ba'oisoi inyan. The case is as follows: there's a bunch of chevra sitting around, schmoozing, whatever it is, and they're talking about getting married. The discussion is the topic of marriage. There are 2 valid witnesses there, and they are discussing, and there's a man and a woman there, and they are discussing about, and one of them says, yes, I think I really would need to get married, I want to get married, and marriage, and this is the whole thing, and he pulls out a ring and gives it to the woman in front of everybody, doesn't say a word. If they were asukin ba'oisoi inyan, if this was the tema, this is the topic and the discussion, even though he doesn't say a word, as long as v'hu she'adayin asukin ba'oisoi inyan, not if they've moved on to discuss football or Formula 1 or the weather or something, as long as they are still currently actively as a group discussing this, and within that context, asukin ba'oisoi inyan, he pulls out a ring and gives it in front of two witnesses, she's mekudeshes. V'chol shekenim omar loshen kiddushin vadai kal v'chomer, if he actually, in that case where he did say a loshen kiddushin, but maybe she doesn't understand it as a loshen of kiddushin, as long as they were discussing kiddushin and that was the theme, then the problem of him using a language of kiddushin that she might not understand is remedied by the fact that they were discussing kiddushin, and it's good enough. So the Emma says even if he said nothing and gave it to it would also be good. And b'diavad, If and Kal v'chomer, it would be good if he did say something, but maybe she didn't totally understand it. But that's what they're discussing. So in other words, you work out from the context. In other words, we see from here, there's no din amira b'kiddushin. There's no halacha, a din of amira b'kiddushin. Okay, so it seems Hagar says the Ramah yesh oimrim delay ba'inam medabrim ba'isa inyan mamash. Some say even more lenient that you don't need to be mamish discussing Kiddushin proper. Ela medabrim me'inyan la'inyan ba'isa inyan. They were jumping around from topic to topic within the meta overarching topic of Kiddushin. Dahainu she'en medabrim b'Kiddushin rak b'tzorchei zivugam. They were discussing the needs of their relationships. Mordechai, and we're going to have to drill down into this a little bit more. We'll do this tomorrow, Mitzvah Hashem. That's the Mordechai and the Rashba. V'yesh omrim, deloi ba'inan medabrim imo. They don't need to be speaking with her. Ela kol shemedabrim lefoneha sagi. She is, lahavdil, forgive me, they're at a party, whatever it is, and they're having this animated discussion, and she's sitting there, but she's not part of the chevra, she's not part of the discussion, but it is very clear these are a bunch of guys having a whole detailed discussion about Kiddushin, and I presume, for the moment we'll assume, she overhears this. She's not just, she's not deaf, and she's not on her phone, and she's not doing something else, but she is understanding in other words, there's an understanding of the context. Even though she wasn't included in the discussion, and then a guy turns around to her and gives her a ring in front of everybody. So the context provides for the understanding of what's going on. Then, this is the Mordechai and the Mashmos of the Tur, and therefore that would be enough to create Kiddushin. Tomorrow, in Mitzvah Hashem, we will start delving into the Mefarshim on this and understanding it in more depth.